"Oh my God, baby, can you hear me?" Maya Williams' voice cracked through the icy wind as she stumbled toward the small, unmoving figure on the snowy sidewalk. A little girl. No coat, no hat, just a thin pair of pajamas and bare feet, curled into herself like a fallen bird. She couldn't have been more than 5. Maya dropped to her knees, ignoring the sting in her joints and the tightness already wrapping around her chest like a vice. She reached out with trembling hands, brushing the child's cheek. It was ice cold. Hey, sweetheart." Her voice softened despite the panic. "Open your eyes. Come on now, don't do this." No response. The girl didn't stir. Only minutes earlier, that same child, 5-year-old Ella Reynolds, had run out of the front door barefoot, chasing after a small gray cat that had darted into the snow. "Mittens! Come back!" she'd called, giggling at first. But when the wind roared and the flakes turned sharp, the fun vanished. The cat disappeared under a parked car, and Ella turned back toward the mansion just as the heavy door clicked shut behind her. The automatic lock engaged with a soft mechanical sound. Within minutes, Ella's cries were drowned by the storm. She curled up by the gate, calling for her cat, for her father, for anyone. But no one came. Maya had just come from the downtown clinic after another exhausting checkup, her chest still sore from the nurse's stethoscope. Now, nearly 20 minutes later, Maya spotted her. "Sweetheart." Maya dropped to her knees beside the girl, her gloved hands trembling. Ella's lips were blue, her small fingers stiff. She looked up at the mansion's towering gate, its bronze nameplate half covered in frost, the Reynolds estate. Lights glowed behind fogged windows. Someone had to be home. "Hey," Maya screamed, slamming both fists against the metal bars. "Somebody please, your little girl, she's out here." The only answer was wind. She jabbed the intercom button, once, twice, nothing. A faint red light blinked, then went out completely. Frozen circuits. She looked down at the girl again. "Don't you quit on me, baby. Don't you dare. God, help me," Maya whispered, scanning the street. She saw porch lights faintly flicker in nearby houses. Maybe someone would help. She ran to the nearest one, pounding on the door. "Please. There's a child, she's freezing to death." A curtain moved, then a man's muffled voice shouted through the door. "Get lost, we're calling the cops." "No, wait, please," she begged, but the light went off. Maya tried another house, then another. Faces peered through windows only to vanish again. One woman yelled, "Scammer! Don't bring your tricks here." Her throat tightened. "What kind of people are you?" she cried into the wind, tears freezing on her lashes. She turned back toward the street just as a horn blared. A car roared from the corner, its headlights blinding. Maya leapt back, slipping on the ice as the vehicle skidded past. Horn blaring, she fell hard, her knees slamming the pavement. Pain shot up her legs. She pressed her palm against the ground, felt the sting warm blood blooming on the snow. She looked toward the mansion again. The girl was still there, still not moving. "Keep going," Maya told herself, staggering to her feet. "You've got to keep going." She staggered back to the little girl, every step heavier than the last. The snow was deeper now, climbing past her ankles. Her legs shook with exhaustion. She reached the child again, knelt, and lifted her into her arms. She crouched, scooping the girl into her arms. The weight was barely there, fragile, like carrying a memory. "You're gonna be okay, sweetheart. I'll take you home with me. Just hold on." The wind lashed at her back as she tried to stand. Her apartment wasn't far, just 4 blocks, but each step felt impossible. Her vision wavered. The fever she'd been fighting for days came roaring back, stealing her strength. By the time she reached the 2nd block, her body gave out. She stumbled, her boot catching on a patch of black ice. She fell forward, still holding the child close. The impact split her knee open again. The pain was distant, muffled by the cold. She tried to rise. She couldn't. Her hands shook too violently. Wait, before we continue, if this story touched your heart, please hit subscribe. It truly encourages us to bring you more powerful stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know our amazing viewers around the world. Her lungs burned. She clutched the child closer, trembling violently. Not now. Please, not now. Her apartment lights were a blur in the distance. Unreachable. She knew she wouldn't make it. So she made a choice. She turned back toward the mansion and crawled toward the stone gate, snow filling her sleeves and hair. Her movements grew slower, weaker, until she slumped against the gatepost. Maya knelt by the stone gate of the mansion once more, pulling off her thin coat and wrapping it around the child. The fabric was soaked, but it was all she had. She brushed the snow from the girl's hair, whispering softly, "I'll keep you warm. I promise." The girl's head rested against her chest, and for a moment, Maya thought she felt warmth returning. She smiled weakly through her tears. "That's it. Stay with me." But her own body was failing. The pain in her chest grew sharp, spreading through her ribs. Her heartbeat stumbled, uneven, like footsteps on thin ice. Her thoughts blurred, slipping away like the snow swirling around her. And then came the memory. Another storm. Another night like this. She was 10 years old, clutching her baby sister Jasmine beneath the overhang of an abandoned grocery store. Their mother had gone to look for shelter. The wind was screaming then, too. Jasmine's tiny breaths had slowed, then stopped. Now, decades later, the same snow fell, and the same prayer left her lips. She murmured, "Not this time." She held the child tighter, though her arms felt numb and heavy. The pain in her chest spread cold, deep, final. Her heartbeat stuttered. Her eyes drifted closed. The sound of the storm softened. Somewhere, faintly, tires crunched over ice. A car door slammed, and someone shouted. But Maya couldn't lift her head. Her last thought was of Jasmine smiling warm and alive in the memory and the small heartbeat she still felt faintly against her chest. Then everything went silent, and Maya William, bloodied, fevered, and fading, slumped into the snow, her body curved protectively around the little girl she refused to abandon. If you felt for Maya tonight, to show your support and comment where you're watching from. Who knows, someone nearby might be watching with you. The headlights cut through the swirling storm like twin beacons. Charles Reynolds slammed the car door shut, his leather shoes crunching on the frozen driveway. The snow bit at his cheeks as he squinted toward the front gate. Someone was slumped near the entrance. His stomach dropped. He didn't wait for security. He didn't even grab his coat from the passenger seat. He ran. "Ella?" His voice tore through the storm as he vaulted the short hedge that bordered the front drive. The figure on the ground wasn't alone. There were two of them, one smaller, tucked beneath a larger frame. Charles dropped to his knees. The cold cut through his suit, but he didn't feel it. He reached forward, brushing away snow from the small face nestled against a stranger's chest. "Ella, sweetheart, it's Daddy, I'm here." The child stirred faintly. Her lashes were frozen, her skin pale and slick with melting frost. She whimpered, curling closer to the woman holding her. The woman, Charles looked at her properly now. A black woman. Late 20s maybe. Clothes soaked. Lips blue. Her arms were locked in place around Ella's tiny body, like a human shield. Blood stained her jeans at the knees. Her hair was frozen in clumps. And yet, even in this state, she was wrapped around his child like she'd been born to protect her. He reached for Ella gently and felt resistance. Her hand clung to the woman's shirt. She didn't want to let go. "Sir," a voice shouted. Two uniformed security guards ran up behind him, along with a late-shift staff member. One of them moved to pull the woman away. But Charles raised a hand sharply. "No," he said. "Don't touch her. Call an ambulance. For both of them." The younger guard hesitated. "Sir, we thought someone at the gate. We didn't know. She saved my daughter's life," Charles snapped. "You should have known." He peeled Ella gently from the woman's grasp, cradling his daughter close. Her lips moved. "She stayed," Ella mumbled, barely audible. "She didn't leave." Charles's throat tightened. He looked down at the woman again, her face slack, her body limp. She looked so fragile in that moment, like glass that had been shattered and reshaped into something stronger. And now, even that strength was failing. "Hang on," he murmured. "You didn't come this far to die now." Within minutes, paramedics arrived. Lights lit up the street in red and white flashes. Charles rode in the ambulance with both of them, Ella on one stretcher, the woman on another. He didn't take his eyes off either. The paramedic closest to the woman checked her vitals, then shook his head slightly. She's critical. Fever, hypothermia, physical trauma. She'll need full cardiac monitoring. "What's her name?" Charles asked. "No ID," the medic replied. "She didn't have a wallet, just this." He held up a prescription bottle half empty, with the label torn and smudged from snow. Only a few letters remained. Maya W. "Maya," Charles repeated quietly, looking down at her. "You stayed." When they arrived at Chicago Mercy General, it was a flurry of activity. Ella was rushed into pediatric emergency. Maya was taken in the opposite direction. Charles stood in the middle of it all, unable to move. His hands were shaking. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. "Mr. Reynolds?" a nurse asked gently. He turned toward her. "Your daughter's stable, mild hypothermia. We're keeping her for observation, but she'll be okay." Charles closed his eyes, swallowed hard. "And the woman? She's in ICU," the nurse said. "We've stabilized her temperature, but the fever's high and her heart is under strain. She needs rest and care. She likely saved your daughter's life." "I know she did. You should rest too," the nurse said softly. "We'll keep you updated." But Charles didn't rest. Not for hours. He sat outside Ella's room, watching through the glass as nurses adjusted her IV. She looked so small in that hospital bed. And yet, she was alive. Because someone, a stranger, chose not to walk away. His phone buzzed with messages. Board members, lawyers, reporters, asking about the sudden emergency. He silenced them all. For once, none of it mattered. Later that morning, after the sun began to rise and the storm started to quiet, Charles stood at the foot of Maya's hospital bed. She looked pale. Her cheeks were sunken. The IV line snaked from her arm, and her breathing came slow and shallow. He'd read her preliminary report: pneumonia likely, and possible heart complications. She'd pushed herself beyond what any human body should have endured. There were no flowers at her bedside, no visitors, no family listed in the records, just her, lying there, alone. He pulled the only chair closer and sat down. "You didn't even know her," he said softly, "and you gave everything." Her hand twitched slightly. For a moment, Charles wondered if she'd heard him. He reached over and gently wrapped her fingers in his. They were warm now. Alive. "I judged you," he whispered, "for your clothes, for your skin, for being where you shouldn't have been." He swallowed, voice cracking. "You were exactly where you needed to be." In the hallway, Ella stirred in her bed, calling for him. Charles squeezed Maya's hand once more. "I'll come back," he promised. "You saved my little girl, Maya. Now let me try to do something for you." As he left the room, Maya didn't move. But in the quiet hum of machines, something shifted. An eyelid flickered. A breath deepened. Somewhere in her dream, the snow began to lift. The sound of soft beeping and the faint scent of antiseptic pulled Maya slowly back to consciousness. Her eyelids felt heavy, her throat dry. At first, she thought she was still outside, still in the snow, still fighting the wind. But when she tried to move, a warm blanket brushed against her skin, and light filtered through her lashes. "Where am I?" Her voice was weak, cracked from cold and exhaustion. A nurse appeared beside her, smiling gently. "You're at Chicago Mercy, sweetheart. You've been through quite a night." Maya blinked up at the woman. The little girl." "She's safe," the nurse said quickly. "She's resting just down the hall. You saved her life." For a long moment, Maya couldn't speak. Her mind replayed flashes of snow and headlights. If you're still here and enjoying the story, we'd love your support. Take a second to hit subscribe. It really means a lot. Of tiny fingers clutching her coat. Her lips trembled. "She's okay. She's better because of you." Maya exhaled shakily, relief washing through her like sunlight after a long winter. Then the room began to spin. Pain stabbed through her chest. The nurse noticed and steadied her hand. "Don't move too fast. The doctor will be here in a minute." That. When the nurse left, Maya stared at the white ceiling, listening to the rhythmic hum of the machines. She remembered collapsing, the cold pressing down, the memory of Jasmine's face. She hadn't imagined it this time. She really had stayed. Minutes later, a deep voice came from the doorway. "You're awake." Maya turned her head. The man standing there was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark overcoat that looked far too clean for this sterile room. His face was drawn, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. "I'm Charles Reynolds," he said. "Ella's father." Maya blinked. The name sounded familiar. One she'd heard whispered in headlines or on local news about luxury towers and charity galas she could never afford to attend. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. "Is she really okay?" He nodded. "Yes, she's in the pediatric wing. Mild hypothermia, but the doctors say she'll make a full recovery." "No." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. "Thank God." Charles stepped closer. For a second, he simply looked at her, the small scars on her knuckles, the IV taped to her hand, the weariness that clung to her even in rest. Then his voice softened. "You saved my daughter's life. I don't know how to thank you." Maya tried to shake her head, embarrassed. I saw her there. I couldn't walk away. You nearly died." She gave a faint, tired smile. "So did she." "That's..." Charles sat down in the chair beside her bed. "The doctors said you were already sick. You shouldn't have even been outside." "I had an appointment," she murmured. "Heart condition. Been fighting it for years." His jaw tightened. "You still stopped." "She was just a kid," Maya said softly. "I knew what it felt like to be left out in the cold." That made him pause. There was something in her tone, an echo of grief that needed no explanation. Charles understood loss. He'd been living with it since the night his wife, Caroline, passed away. He had thrown himself into work, into walls and contracts, trying not to feel. And here, in this small hospital room, was a woman who had risked her life simply because she refused not to feel. He glanced at her chart. "You don't have anyone listed as next of kin." Maya's eyes flickered toward the window. "No one left," she said simply. "My mom passed when I was 20. My sister when I was 10. It's just me now." He looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she said gently. "I've had good people cross my path, even if they never stayed long." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the beeping of machines and the steady fall of snow outside. Charles cleared his throat. "Ella keeps asking about you. She calls you her angel." Maya smiled faintly. "She's sweet. She shouldn't be out there in that weather alone." "She chased the cat," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "I should have been home sooner." "You couldn't have known." "That's the problem," he said quietly. "I didn't know. My daughter was freezing outside my own house, and it took a stranger to notice." His voice cracked at the edges. "You showed more care in one night than I have in months." Maya studied him for a moment. His suit, his watch, even his exhaustion spoke of someone who'd built a world too big for himself to feel safe inside it. "Maybe tonight's your second chance," she said. He looked at her, startled. "You can't fix the past," she continued softly. "But you can start showing up." Charles exhaled, almost a laugh but not quite. "You sound like my wife." She was wise then. "She was," he said, eyes distant, "and she'd have wanted me to say thank you properly." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded card. "This is my number. Anything you need, medical bills, housing, medication, I'll handle it." Maya hesitated. "You don't owe me that." "Ma, I owe you everything," he said firmly. "Ella wouldn't be alive if not for you." She looked down at the card, then back at him. "Sometimes gratitude turns into pity," she said quietly. "I don't need pity. I just need to know she's really okay." He nodded, realizing she wasn't asking for help, she was asking for dignity. "She is. And she wants to see you when you're stronger." Maya's eyes softened. "I'd like that." Before he left, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth," he said, "I've seen the footage. The security cameras caught everything. You didn't just save her. You talked to her. You kept her awake. You told her stories. You gave her your coat." Maya closed her eyes. The memory of that endless night flooded back Ella's small voice. The sting of wind, the sound of her own heartbeat fading. "I couldn't lose another child to the cold," she whispered. Charles frowned slightly. Another? But Maya was already slipping back into sleep, her lips moving as she whispered a name, Jasmine. He stood there for a moment longer, watching her chest rise and fall. Then he quietly left, the door clicking shut behind him. In her dreams, the snow had stopped. The cold was gone. She was back under a sky of soft light. And somewhere far away, a child's laughter echoed. Outside her room, Charles stood at the nurse's station, looking through the glass toward the pediatric ward where Ella slept, tiny and peaceful beneath a mound of blankets. He realized, with a sudden and painful clarity, that he had been chasing the wrong kind of safety all these years. Money couldn't keep his daughter warm. But kindness, a stranger's kindness, had. And for the first time in years, Charles Reynolds bowed his head and prayed. Charles Reynolds hadn't closed his eyes since the storm broke. The clock in the hospital hallway read 3:42 a.m., yet time meant nothing. The blizzard outside had quieted, leaving only the occasional gust that rattled the glass panes. In the dim corridor light, he looked older than 44, his sharp features softened by guilt, his hands trembling around the paper cup of coffee he hadn't touched. He stood at the window of Ella's room, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the pale pink blanket. Machines hummed softly beside her bed, their lights blinking in rhythm with her breathing. A nurse entered quietly, checked Ella's vitals, and smiled. "She's recovering beautifully, Mr. Reynolds. Children are stronger than we think." He nodded, forcing a smile, but his voice cracked. "She shouldn't have needed to be strong. That's my job." The nurse's eyes softened before she left the room. Charles turned back toward his daughter. His reflection stared back at him in the glass-tailored suit, wrinkled, tie loosened, eyes hollow. He had built skyscrapers that touched clouds, corporations that shaped city skylines. But he had failed to see his own child locked outside his home. He whispered more to himself than to her, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Ella stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, "Maya." Charles blinked. "You're dreaming about her, aren't you?" He sat beside her, brushing a curl of hair from her forehead. "She stayed with you." His mind replayed the security footage he had watched an hour earlier with the police officer, a silent, grainy record of courage. Maya's thin frame kneeling in the snow, banging on the gate. Maya wrapping her coat around his daughter. Maya holding the child against her chest as the storm swallowed them both. It was painful to watch. It was unbearable to realize he had been asleep in a first-class seat, somewhere above the clouds, while this stranger risked everything on his doorstep. The doctor's voice from earlier echoed in his head. If she'd been found 15 minutes later, both would have died. Charles rubbed his temples, his thoughts circling like vultures. He needed to see Maya again. Not just to thank her something deeper, harder to name, maybe to remind himself that decency still existed in a world where people locked their doors to cries for help. He rose, kissed Ella's forehead, and stepped quietly into the hallway. The ICU was 2 floors down. The nurses there had begun to recognize him already, the tall man in the expensive coat who paced outside room 214 like a ghost. When he arrived, Maya was awake again, weak, pale, but awake. She looked small in the hospital bed, framed by tangled wires and beeping monitors. The snow light from the window turned her skin, a soft amber, almost fragile. Charles hesitated at the door. "May I come in?" She looked up, her eyes hazy with exhaustion. "You already did." He smiled slightly, stepping closer. "You remember me?" "I remember your little girl." Her voice was rough, quiet. "She was brave. Braver than me, maybe." "Don't say that," he replied. "You saved her life." Maya looked away. "You would have done the same." He shook his head. "I wasn't there. That's the truth I have to live with." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the machines filled the space between them. Then Charles cleared his throat. "The doctors say you'll need weeks of rest. And treatment. I've already arranged to cover your expenses." Her eyes narrowed faintly. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," he said simply. "Please don't refuse this one thing." Maya gave a tired smile. "You rich folks don't take no for an answer, do you?" He chuckled softly. "Not usually, but I'll try to listen when it matters." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing his sincerity. "Why are you here, really?" The question hit deeper than she intended. Charles looked at his hands. "Because I can't stop thinking about that night. About what you did. About how no one else came when you knocked." Her expression softened. "People get scared. They think helping is dangerous." "Dangerous?" He shook his head, bitter. They were scared of a woman begging for help while a child froze to death. "What kind of world is that?" "The same one we all live in," Maya said. "Some of us just choose to see it clearer." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How do you still have faith in people after that?" Maya looked out the window where the first light of dawn touched the rooftops, melting the edges of the snow. "Because someone, somewhere, once stayed for me too. My mom. Even when she was sick, she made me believe we could survive anything, as long as we didn't turn cold on the inside." Charles nodded slowly. "You remind me of her, of the kind of person my wife was." There was a long pause. Then Maya asked quietly, "What happened to her?" He swallowed hard. "Cancer. 3 years ago. Ella was only 2. I threw myself into work because it was easier than grieving. Easier than feeling useless." "I know that feeling," Maya whispered. "Losing someone and thinking you could fix the world if you just worked harder. But grief doesn't listen to logic." He looked at her, eyes tired but honest. "You talk like you've lived 1,000 lives. Maybe just one very long one." A nurse entered briefly to check Maya's pulse, giving Charles a polite nod before leaving them alone again. The silence afterward felt oddly comfortable. 2 strangers connected by loss and the strange miracle of survival. Charles stood. "Would you like to see Ella later today? She keeps asking for you." Maya hesitated. "I don't want to scare her. I probably look like I lost a fight with the snow itself." "She'd be thrilled," he said, smiling. "You're her hero." Maya's laugh came weak but genuine. "Hero's a big word. I just didn't walk away." He looked down at her, his voice lowering. "That's what heroes do. They stay." Her gaze lifted to meet his, and for a brief second, something unspoken passed between them, a shared understanding of loneliness, of second chances neither had expected. Charles exhaled slowly. "Rest, Maya. I'll bring her by later. And maybe some real coffee, if the nurses allow it." "Make it with cream," she murmured, already drifting back to sleep. "Hospital coffee tastes like regret." He chuckled quietly, stepping out of the room. In the hallway, the early morning sun was breaking through the clouds. It painted the hospital walls in soft gold, melting the last hints of night. Charles stood there for a long time, staring out at the city beyond the same city that had once felt so indifferent to him. Now, for the first time in years, he felt something shift inside. He realized that money had bought him buildings, cars, security, but this woman, this stranger, had given him something no amount of wealth ever could: perspective. And as he walked back toward Ella's room, he knew that the storm had changed more than just the weather. It had changed him. The next morning bloomed gently over Chicago, softening the edges of rooftops still powdered in snow. From the wide hospital window in the pediatric wing, little Ella Reynolds sat up with a fleece blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her small hands clutching a stuffed bear that one of the nurses had brought earlier. But her eyes weren't on the cartoons flickering on the television or the breakfast tray left untouched. They were fixed on the door. "Is she coming?" she asked for the 3rd time that hour. Charles Reynolds, seated in the visitor's chair beside her bed, smiled and brushed a crumb from her cheek. "She is, as soon as the nurse says she's strong enough." Ella looked down, quiet. "I want to say thank you." "You will," he assured her, "and maybe even more than that." Ella frowned curiously, her nose crinkling. "Like what?" "Like, maybe we can do something nice for her in return." She nodded slowly, considering. "Like pancakes?" Charles chuckled. "I think she deserves more than pancakes, though I'm sure she wouldn't turn them down." Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Charles stood, his heart unexpectedly skipping. When he opened it, Maya Williams stood just beyond the frame in a wheelchair, her blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her skin still carried the pale tone of recovery, but her eyes were clearer than yesterday. The nurse behind her gave a nod and gently rolled her into the room. Ella's face lit up. "Maya." Maya's smile broke slowly. beautifully. Hey there, little snow angel. Ella reached her arms out. Charles stepped forward, lifting her carefully from the bed and bringing her over to Maya, who embraced the girl gently, mindful of her own weakness. You kept me warm, Ella whispered, burying her face in Maya's neck. Maya closed her eyes and held the child just a little tighter. You held on. That was all you. You're strong, sweetheart. Charles watched the scene unfold, his throat thick. The image of his daughter resting in the arms of a woman who should have been a stranger now something more struck a chord deeper than he could explain. Thank you for coming, he said quietly, moving to Maya's side. You didn't have to. Maya looked at him. I wanted to. She turned to Ella. And I wanted to see this brave girl again. You kept me going that night too, you know. Ella blinked. I did? You sure did, Maya replied, brushing a loose curl behind the girl's ear. Your voice helped me remember why I had to stay awake. There was a beat of silence. Then Ella pulled back and said, Daddy says we should do something for you. Maya smiled at Charles, raising an eyebrow. Oh, did he? He shrugged playfully. It's true. Ella leaned into Maya's ear and whispered, He says we're rich. Maya laughed a sound that seemed to warm the whole room. Is that so? Ella nodded. We can get you a big house, with no snow. I'd be happy just visiting you two once in a while, Maya said softly. Charles leaned on the foot of the bed, watching them. You don't have to just visit. Maya looked up. What do you mean? He cleared his throat. Ella, she needs someone around. Someone who actually sees her. I work too much. I miss too much. You didn't even know her, and you saw everything. You're asking me to stay? Maya said slowly. Charles nodded. At least for now. I'd like to offer you a position, part-time, if that's what you prefer. Or just be part of her life in whatever way you're comfortable. Maya's expression softened with something like disbelief. You don't owe me that. This isn't about owing, he replied. It's about giving Ella what she needs, and maybe giving us all a second chance. There was a long pause. Maya looked at Ella, who had now settled back in the bed and was humming to her bear. Then she looked out the window, where sunlight melted icicles from the edge of the glass. I've been alone a long time, Mr. Reynolds, she said quietly, and I'm not sure I remember how to belong anywhere. Then maybe this is the right place to remember, Charles said. She looked back at him. If I say yes, I don't want charity. I want to earn it, and I still need time to get well. You'll have all the time you need, he promised. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll think about it. No. Just then, Ella yawned. Charles moved to help her lay back. Maya gently kissed her forehead. Get some rest, little one. Charles watched as Ella drifted back to sleep, then stepped toward Maya's wheelchair. Let me walk you back? She smiled. You still owe me that coffee with cream. He grinned. Coming right up. As they left the room, side by side down the quiet hospital hallway, neither of them spoke for a moment, but the silence was warm this time. It was the silence of something beginning, not ending. In the elevator, Maya finally spoke. You know what I remembered the most during that storm? What? Charles asked. The way she reached for my hand, Maya said softly, like she trusted me, like I mattered. Charles looked at her, voice low. You do. She glanced at him. You're not the man I thought you'd be when I saw that mansion. And you're not the woman I thought I saw on the sidewalk. They smiled. The elevator doors opened to a new floor. And as they stepped out, the morning sun poured in through the tall glass windows, warm, gentle, and full of promise. The following week unfolded like a slow thaw after a brutal winter. Maya remained in the hospital for observation, her fever finally broken, though fatigue clung to her like a second skin. Pneumonia had weakened her lungs, and her heart, already vulnerable from years of strain, needed rest, according to Dr. Monroe, a stern but kind-hearted cardiologist with a booming laugh and a fondness for 80 seconds jazz. But for all the medications and machines, what healed Maya most was the presence of Ella. Every day, the little girl would march into Maya's room with new drawings, often of the two of them wrapped in superhero capes, holding hands under a bright Sunday. You look strong here, Ella would say proudly. Like a real-life Wonder Woman. And Maya would laugh. Only if you're my sidekick. Charles watched these moments from the side, quieter than usual, his phone increasingly left on silent, his laptop unopened. He was beginning to understand something he'd never let himself feel. That connection wasn't built through calendars and meetings, but in small, sincere moments, drawings, smiles, shared silence. By Friday afternoon, Maya was cleared for discharge. Rest at home, no work, no stairs, Dr. Monroe warned, wagging a finger. And if I find out you're lifting anything heavier than a teacup, I'll personally drag you back here. Maya grinned. Yes, sir, no rebellions this week. Charles stood in the hallway just beyond her discharge room, leaning against the wall with 2 coffee cups in hand. You came bearing offerings? She teased, stepping out in her oversized coat. Hot with cream, no hospital regret, he replied, handing her one. They walked slowly through the main entrance together. Outside, the sky was clear, the snow now just soft piles along the curb. A black SUV waited at the pickup zone. Maya raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you're sending me home in that? Charles gave her a half smile. Actually, I was wondering if you'd consider staying somewhere else, just for a while. She paused, halfway to the curb. Somewhere else? He took a breath. The guest house. At our place. Maya's eyes widened. You want me to live at your estate? Temporarily, he clarified, hands raised. You're still healing. It's quiet, safe. Ella would love to see you more often. And you'd have full-time care if anything flared up. She hesitated. That's a big ask. We don't even really know each other. Charles nodded. That's fair. But I trust you. And more than that, I want to help. You saved Ella. You gave me back something I didn't even realize I'd lost. This isn't a transaction, Maya. It's an invitation. Maya stared at him, unsure if it was kindness or guilt behind his eyes. Either way, she saw no manipulation there, only sincerity and something else, quieter, a grief he hadn't fully unpacked. She sighed. You're lucky I don't have a landlord to answer to. He grinned. So you'll consider it? Only if the guest house has a real coffee maker. It does, and a reading nook, and heated floors. Maya raised an eyebrow. Now you're just showing off. Guilty. The car ride to the Reynolds estate was quiet at first. Maya gazed out the window as familiar streets gave way to wider roads, lined with old trees still dusted with snow. Her memories of this place were limited to the night of the storm, the tall gates, the unreachable warmth beyond them. Now, as the driver slowed through the winding private road, she felt something strange, belonging. The house came into view grand, yes, but softened by the late afternoon light. The guest house, nestled just beyond the main structure, looked more like a cottage than a mansion addition. Ivy curled around its brick facade, and warm light spilled from the windows. Charles stepped out first and opened her door before the driver could. Chivalry still alive, huh? Maya teased as he helped her out. In very select moments, he replied, smirking. Ella burst through the front door of the main house, coat half-buttoned, hair still damp from her bath. Maya, she shouted, arms wide. Maya braced herself for the hug. Whoa there. I'm still a little breakable. I missed you every day. I missed you too, Snow Angel. Charles walked them to the guest house porch, where a housekeeper Maya had seen in passing waved from the path. Inside, the space was warm and inviting. Soft rugs, bookshelves, a small fireplace. The bedroom looked like something from a dream, sunlight spilling across cream-colored blankets and framed photographs of cityscapes. It's beautiful, Maya said, awe softening her voice. Charles stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. Consider it your space, for as long as you need it. She turned to him, more serious now. You sure you're okay with this? I'm not sure of a lot these days, he admitted. But this, you being here, it feels right. Ella chimed in. Can I come visit after dinner? Maya grinned. Only if you bring pancakes. I will, with sprinkles. As Charles led Ella back toward the main house, Maya stood at the window of her new room and watched them, father and daughter, laughing in the snow-lit dusk. She pressed her fingers gently against the glass. For the first time in a long time, Maya wasn't just surviving, she was arriving. Maya awoke to the smell of cinnamon and vanilla drifting in through the cracked window of the guest house. Morning light streamed in soft and gold. And for a moment, she thought she might still be dreaming. But no, This wasn't her old studio apartment in South Shore, with its peeling paint and rattling heat vents. This bed was warm, the air was still, and her chest, though sore, no longer ached with every breath. She sat up slowly, her body still reminding her of the cold it had braved. A folded note sat on the nightstand beside a steaming cup of tea. "Welcome home, Ella and Dad. P.S. There's a stack of pancakes on the porch if you're hungry." Maya smiled as she ran her fingers over the neat handwriting. She stood, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and moved to the front door. Sure enough, on a little wooden table outside was a plate of pancakes, blueberry, her favorite, and a tiny container of maple syrup with a post-it, organic. "Dad says it's fancy." Maya chuckled and sat down, the cold morning air brushing her face. In the distance, the main house stood quiet but alive. She watched as a gardener trimmed the frozen bushes near the fountain, and a housekeeper exited the front door with a bag of laundry. It was a world she didn't belong to, and yet, here she was. Later that afternoon, Charles stopped by. He brought with him a book, The Snow Child, and 2 mugs of proper coffee. "I figured you'd appreciate real beans," he said, offering her one with a crooked grin. "Bless you," Maya replied, taking a sip. "I was starting to think you'd lured me here with false promises." They sat by the fireplace. The silence between them had shifted again, no longer tentative, no longer bound by formality. It was the kind of silence shared between 2 people who had witnessed something too big to name. Charles cleared his throat. "Ella talks about you like you're some kind of guardian angel." Maya smiled softly. "She's just trying to make sense of what happened. Kids do that." I'm not sure she's wrong," he said. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "You don't need to keep thanking me, Charles." He leaned back. "I'm not. Not this time." She tilted her head. "Then what's this about?" He hesitated. "I wanted to ask you something. Not about work. Or Ella. About you." Maya set her mug down slowly. "All right. That night," he began carefully, "when you were slipping under, you said a name. Jasmine." The air between them shifted. Maya's shoulders tightened. "You remember that?" He nodded. "I wasn't sure if it was real or just something caught in the moment." Maya looked into the fire for a long time before she spoke. "She was my daughter." Charles sat still. "She died during a snowstorm," Maya said quietly. 3 years ago. I was at work. The sitter left the window cracked in the back room, didn't think the cold would reach her. She was 2. Pneumonia took her in 2 days. Charles closed his eyes. "I blamed myself," she continued. "Still do, some days. That night with Ella, it felt like the universe gave me a chance to do it right. To hold on. Even if it wasn't my child." He was silent. Then softly, "I'm so sorry, Maya." She looked down. "I never told anyone the full story. I guess when you survive something like that, people expect you to just keep moving." "I know that feeling," Charles said. "After Caroline died, everyone wanted to check in, but no one wanted to sit in the silence with me. That's the worst part. When people treat grief like it's a problem to fix instead of something you carry." Maya nodded. "Exactly." He studied her, something like admiration in his eyes. "You've been carrying more than most people ever will." "I'm tired of carrying it alone," she admitted, voice low. "You're not alone here," he said without hesitation. That evening, Ella came to visit the guest house with a board game and a handful of Lego people tucked into her pajama pocket. She climbed up beside Maya on the couch, her hair still damp from bath time. "I made you a person," she said, handing Maya a Lego figure with a makeshift red cape and a tiny coffee mug molded into its hand. "What's her name?" Maya asked. "Dr. Braveheart," Ella declared. "She saves people, and she has coffee powers." Maya laughed, holding the figure up to the firelight. "She sounds like someone I'd get along with." Charles stood in the doorway, watching the 2 of them laugh together, and for a moment, the mansion felt like a home again. That night, as Maya lay in bed, the memory of Jasmine came again, but this time, it wasn't the frantic, painful flash of her daughter's final days. It was softer Jasmine on the swing, giggling under a sky of winter clouds. It didn't hurt as much. And for the first time in years, Maya cried not out of grief, but out of something that felt like healing. In the dark, she whispered, "I didn't forget you, baby girl, but I think I'm ready to keep living." Outside, the snow had started to fall again, soft, slow, and silent. The next morning brought with it the muffled hum of snowplows in the distance and the rich, earthy scent of fresh coffee brewing in the guest house. Maya stirred from sleep just before sunrise, her body still stiff but no longer aching. There was something about the air, quiet but full of life, that made her feel like she belonged. Not permanently, but for now. Wrapped in a soft wool cardigan, she stepped out onto the small porch and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The snow had blanketed the world again overnight. Not fierce like the storm, gentle this time, like the earth was being forgiven. She closed her eyes and breathed in the cold. It no longer scared her. Behind her, the soft clatter of footsteps drew her attention. Ella was running down the path from the main house in her snow boots and pajama pants, a crumpled piece of paper clutched in her hand. "Wait, Ella, slow down, the snow's slick," Maya called, but the little girl ran straight into her arms, her cheeks flushed pink. "I drew you something," she beamed, pushing the paper forward. Maya unfolded it. There they were, two stick figures, one taller with curly hair and a red heart over her head, and the smaller one with pigtails and a wide smile. In the background stood a house, a sun peeking from behind the clouds, and a line scrawled across the top, "This is my safe place." Maya blinked back the tears. Is this us?" Ella nodded proudly. "It's where you saved me, but now it's where we both live, so we can be safe together." Maya scooped her up gently, hugging her tight. "It's the best thing I've ever been given. I wanted you to have it before school," Ella whispered, "so you don't forget me while I'm gone. Sweetheart, I could never forget you. Not in 1,000 winters." Charles appeared a moment later, still adjusting his coat. "Sorry she raced out before I could grab her gloves." Maya smiled. "Don't worry, I've got her." He looked at the drawing. "She's been working on that since last night. Wouldn't go to bed until she finished it." "Dell, she has a beautiful heart," Maya said, then glanced up. "She gets that from Caroline?" Charles paused. "Mostly. But lately, I think it's also from you." They stood together in the snow, just for a moment, no roles, no titles, just two people shaped by loss, now circling something tender and new. Later that morning, after Ella was dropped off at her private academy in Lincoln Park, Charles returned to the guest house with a brown bag and a hesitant smile. "Bribery?" Maya asked, eyeing the bag. "Brunch," he corrected. "Fresh bagels. And I may have picked up your favorite, the lemon ricotta ones." Maya's eyes lit up. "You've been asking Ella, haven't you?" He shrugged. "She's a good informant." They settled in the small sunroom, plates between them, the window framing the freshly fallen snow like a painting. Maya noticed Charles was quieter than usual. "What's on your mind?" she asked. He sighed. "I have a meeting this afternoon with my board. I've been thinking of stepping back. Maybe not full-time, but enough to be present. For Ella. For this." Maya raised a brow. "You don't do anything halfway, do you? I used to think working nonstop made me a good provider. After Caroline passed, it was how I coped. I built bigger, signed more deals, added more floors to buildings. And now? Now I look at Ella and wonder if she even remembers what my voice sounds like at bedtime." Maya nodded slowly. "Kids don't measure love by square footage. They measure it by time." He leaned forward. "You know, Caroline used to say that too." Maya's expression softened. "Sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was. I failed her toward the end. I was so afraid of losing her, I pretended she wasn't dying. I didn't sit with her enough. I didn't ask her the hard questions." "That's not failure, Charles," Maya said gently. "That's fear and love. Sometimes they blur together." He looked at her, eyes clouded with a grief that still ran deep. "You speak like someone who's done this healing thing before." Maya smiled sadly. "I've just had a head start." A moment passed. Then Charles asked something unexpected. "What do you dream about now?" Maya blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, before all this, it was just survival. But now, if you weren't sick, weren't working 2 jobs, if you had peace, what would you chase?" She sat back, thoughtful. "Honestly, I'd open a little reading corner somewhere. A shop with warm lamps and mismatched chairs. Coffee. Quiet. Maybe read stories to kids. Maybe write a few of my own. Charles nodded. You'd be good at that. I'd call it Jasmine's porch. He looked up. Your daughter? Maya smiled. She loved sitting outside after it snowed. Said the world looked softer, like it had been forgiven. No. He held her gaze for a moment, then gently reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I know we said no charity, so consider this a collaboration. Maya opened the envelope slowly, and inside was a check, made out in her name, enough to cover rent for 2 years, or the startup cost of something meaningful. She stared at it. Charles, you don't have to decide now, he said. But if you ever want to build Jasmine's porch, I'll help you lay the first brick. That… Maya looked at the check, then back at him. Why are you doing this? Because you stayed, he said quietly. You stayed when you didn't have to. And now, I want to stay too. A silence settled over them, not awkward, not heavy, just real. And in that sunlit room, with snow melting on the windows and dreams beginning to whisper again, Maya felt something she hadn't in years. She felt hope. It wasn't long before the rest of the Reynolds estate began to buzz with curiosity about Maya's presence. On a crisp Wednesday morning, while Maya was sipping tea on the porch of the guest house, she noticed a man in a security uniform standing near the tree line. He wasn't patrolling. He was watching her. She recognized him instantly. Brent. The night of the storm, it had been his voice barking over the intercom, accusing her of trying to break in. His refusal to open the gates still echoed in her dreams. He shifted uncomfortably when their eyes met, then turned and walked briskly toward the back of the property. Maya set her cup down and stood, wrapping her shawl tightly. Her body still tired easily, but she didn't hesitate. Not today. She followed the path toward the back entrance of the estate, her boots crunching over a dusting of snow. Brent stood near the maintenance shed, hands in his jacket pockets, gaze averted. You going to keep hiding? She called out. He turned, his face, normally unreadable behind the stoic mask of private security, was pale. I wasn't hiding, he muttered. Maya folded her arms. Looked like it to me. Brent sighed. I figured this was coming. Then let's not waste time, she said firmly. You saw me outside those gates. You heard me begging. You looked me in the eye. And you left us out there. He didn't argue, didn't deny it. That, at least, she respected. I thought you were lying, he said after a long pause. I thought, I don't know, that it was some setup. A distraction, because I'm black, Maya said flatly. Brent's shoulders tensed. That's not… You can say it, she interrupted. Or I can. Either way, we both know the truth. He looked away. It's not how I was raised. When the boss is away, protocol gets tighter. You don't let people in. You don't open gates without clearance. That's what I was trained for. I wasn't asking for clearance, Maya said, her voice cracking slightly. I was holding a freezing 5-year-old who was slipping into hypothermia. I didn't need you to be trained. I needed you to be human. Brent swallowed hard. I went back to the footage after. I watched it 100 times. I messed up. He looked at her, eyes raw. I almost got that kid killed. And me, she added. I know, he whispered. They stood in silence, two people staring across a chasm of failure. Finally, Maya said, I'm not here to humiliate you, Brent. I'm here because I want you to look me in the eye and tell me you understand what you did, and that it wasn't just protocol. It was fear, and prejudice, and the decision to ignore a human life because she didn't fit into your version of safe. Brent nodded slowly, shame rising in his face like heat. You're right. I was wrong, and I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not offering it yet, she said plainly, but I'm also not going to stay silent. I've had too many nights wondering how many others like you are out there, good men with rules and fear tangled into something dangerous. He looked down. Charles offered to fire me after he saw the tape. I begged him not to. I said I wanted to fix it. Do something. Anything. Maya studied him. Then start by changing how you see people who come to the gate. All of them. no matter how they look or sound. You don't have to throw out protocol. Just remember that behind every voice is a life. Brent nodded. I will. She turned to go, then paused. And Brent? He looked up. If you ever freeze like that again, God help you if it's my daughter on the other side. His mouth opened slightly. I didn't know you had a daughter. I don't, she said. Not anymore. And with that, she walked away, leaving Brent standing in the snow, hollow and silent. That evening, Charles noticed something in Maya's eyes, something tight, like she'd been carrying weight all day. You all right? He asked as they cleaned up after dinner together in the guest house kitchen. I saw Brent today, she said, wiping down the counter slowly. Charles froze. Did he say something to you? He didn't have to. I found him. Charles narrowed his eyes. If he didn't, she interrupted gently. He owned it. And I told him the truth. Charles sighed, wiping his hands on a towel. I wanted to fire him. I still might. No, Maya said. You keep him, but make sure he knows he owes more than apologies. He owes action. Charles leaned on the counter, looking at her. You're stronger than most people I know. Maya smirked. That's because you don't know most people I know. He smiled, but it faded after a moment. Ella asked today if you could come to her class reading next week. Maya's brows lifted. Me? Not you? She said I read too fast and make all the voices sound like robots. Maya laughed. She's not wrong. She picked Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. Said she wants her class to know what a real snow hero sounds like. Maya looked down. The laughter caught in her throat. That book was Jasmine's favorite too. Charles reached across the counter, gently touching her hand. Then maybe this is a sign. She nodded slowly, blinking away tears. I'll go. I'd like that. That night, as Maya curled into bed beneath the soft glow of a reading lamp, she held the drawing Ella had given her a few days earlier. The one with the red heart and the words, "This is my safe place." And for the first time in years, Maya believed it. The classroom buzzed with energy. 20 or so 5-year-olds sat cross-legged on a colorful alphabet rug, their coats still hanging lopsided on the back wall, boots forming puddles on the mat near the door. At the front of the room, Miss Duffy, a red-haired teacher with a permanent smile, clapped her hands for attention. All right, everyone, time for our special guest. The children stilled, eyes shifting toward the open door, and there stood Maya William. She wore a soft blue sweater, jeans, and a warm smile. Her curls framed her face, and tucked under her arm was a worn, hardback copy of The Snowy Day. Charles had offered to drive her, but she insisted on taking the train, her quiet way of reminding herself that even now, with a gatehouse and fireplace, and a little girl who looked at her like a hero, she was still the same woman who once walked 3 miles to work in nursing shoes. Ella jumped up from the rug, grinning. That's her. That's Maya. The class clapped as if greeting a celebrity. Miss Duffy gestured to the rocking chair beside the rug. Come have a seat, Miss William. Edge. Maya sat slowly, her body still not fully recovered, but her voice steady and calm. Hi, everyone. I'm Maya. I'm very happy to be here. Ella tells me you've been learning about winter stories. A chorus of enthusiastic yes followed. Well, this one's very special to me, and to someone I used to know. She tapped the book's cover gently. So let's begin. As she read, her voice softened and deepened in the right places. When Peter, the little boy in the red snowsuit, made tracks in the snow or dragged a stick along a fence, the children leaned forward, captivated. Peter pretended he was a mountain climber. He climbed up a great big mountain of snow and slid all the way down. Maya's voice brightened with every page. Behind the children, Miss Duffy and 2 other teachers stood quietly, watching the transformation take place. Maya wasn't just reading a book. She was building a bridge between worlds, between past and present, between grief and healing. When she reached the final page, where Peter wakes up to find the snow still falling, there was a hush over the room. Maya closed the book slowly. And that's the end, she said gently. One small boy raised his hand. Miss Maya, do you know Peter? The class giggled. Maya smiled. Not exactly, but I think we've all been Peter before, walking into a snowy world, not sure what's waiting, but hoping it's something good. Ella crawled over and hugged her from the side. That's what I told them, that you were in a snowstorm too. Maya looked at the teacher. Miss Duffy nodded, gently. It's true, Maya said to the class, and it was scary, but someone very special helped me be brave. Was it Ella? One girl asked. Maya smiled. Yes, it was. Outside, in the parking lot, Charles leaned against his SUV, a coffee in hand. He watched through the windows as the class lined up for lunch, and Maya stood to leave. He hadn't told her he would come, but he'd cleared his schedule. He wouldn't have missed this for anything. Maya emerged a few minutes later, bundled in her coat. She raised her eyebrows when she saw him. Stalking me now? She teased. I came to witness greatness, he replied. They were a tough crowd. You handled it like a pro. She smiled, brushing her curls back. It was Jasmine's favorite story. I used to read it to her before naps. I think it felt like she was with me in there. Charles stepped closer. She would have been proud of you. Maya looked away briefly. That means more than you know. Come on, he said. Lunch is on me. They stopped at a quiet diner near the river, a local spot Maya used to frequent before her second job had stolen her nights. The owner, Mrs. Gonzalez, recognized her instantly. Maya William. Girl, I haven't seen you since you ordered 3 grilled cheeses for takeout during that Cubs game. Maya laughed. I was stress eating. Don't judge me. Mrs. Gonzalez beamed. You still want your sweet tea with lemon? Yes, ma'am. Charles raised an eyebrow. How many places know your order? Only the good ones, she quipped, as they sat in a corner booth with their steaming plates between them. Grilled cheese for her, turkey sandwich for him. Charles looked around the diner. It was simple. Plastic booths, faded sports photos, a jukebox in the back, but it felt real, Maya's kind of place. You ever think about leaving Chicago? He asked mid-bite. She shook her head. This city holds too many pieces of me. My daughter, my mistakes, my roots. He nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about what you said, about people not needing more space, but more time. And I think I'm finally ready to make space for time. Maya sipped her tea. Ella will love that. He hesitated, then added, I think I'm learning how to love it too. They fell into silence again, but it wasn't awkward. It was comfortable now, familiar. As they walked out of the diner, a gust of wind caught Maya's scarf. Charles caught it midair, holding it out with a small smile. You always catch what's about to fall? She asked, teasing. Only the important things. She took it from him gently. I'm not used to people catching me. Nama, maybe it's time you were. Back at the guest house, as evening settled in, Maya sat with Ella on the couch, watching the snowfall return. The child was sleepy, her head in Maya's lap. Did you have fun at school today? Maya asked. Ella nodded. Best day. Maya brushed her fingers through the girl's hair. You're brave, you know. Ella mumbled. You too. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, Maya whispered something only the silence could hear. I think I'm ready to believe in home again. 3 days later, Maya awoke to a knock at her door firm, controlled, the kind that carried authority without volume. She glanced at the clock, 6:42 a.m., too early for deliveries, and Charles always texted before visiting. She opened the door cautiously, wrapped in her robe, and was met by a tall woman in a sleek black coat, her hair pinned tightly and her eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. Behind her stood another man in a blazer holding a slim leather portfolio. Maya William? The woman asked, voice smooth, practiced. Yes? I'm Detective Angela Kessler, with the Chicago Police Department. This is my associate, Officer Daly. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding an incident that occurred on the night of the snowstorm. Maya's stomach clenched. What kind of incident? Kessler offered a vague smile. May we come in? Maya hesitated. The guest house was still warm with the scent of coffee and cinnamon from the night before. It felt wrong letting this official coldness inside, but she stepped aside. Of course. They sat at the small kitchen table. Officer Daly opened his folder but didn't speak. Detective Kessler did all the talking. On the evening of January 17th, at approximately 7:45 p.m., a 911 call was placed from a neighbor in the vicinity of Highland Park. The caller reported seeing a woman carrying what appeared to be an unconscious child through the snow, banging on doors, possibly attempting to break in. Maya's heart dropped. We've confirmed the child's identity as Ella Reynolds. As you were found with her later, and both of you were taken to the hospital, your names are part of the official record. Yes, Maya said slowly. That was me. I was trying to get help. We're not disputing that, Kessler said, but her tone held a layer of skepticism. However, there's a concern raised by one of the neighbors, an elderly woman, Mrs. Halberd. She claims you were aggressive, that you screamed threats, that you tried to force her door open. Maya sat back, stunned. I knocked. I begged. I was holding a child in my arms, who was dying. I didn't threaten anyone. I fell. I cried. But I never tried to break in. Mrs. Halberd is pursuing a formal complaint for attempted unlawful entry. Maya's voice cracked. That's insane. We'll continue to investigate, Kessler said, rising. This is not a criminal charge at this stage, but we recommend securing legal representation if you are contacted again. Officer Daly handed her a card. For your records. And just like that, they were gone. Maya stood in the silence of the guest house, her hands trembling. It didn't matter that she'd saved Ella's life, that she nearly died doing it. To some people, she would always be a threat first, a hero second. She picked up her phone and called Charles. He answered on the second ring. Maya, everything all right? I need to see you. Now. No. 15 minutes later, Maya stood in Charles' home office, recounting every word, every glance, every veiled implication from the visit. Charles sat behind his desk, his jaw tight, eyes stormy. They came to your door without warning? She nodded. They said I might face a complaint for trying to save your daughter. He stood abruptly, pacing. This is absurd. I'll call our legal team, and if this reaches the press, that's not what I'm worried about, Maya said, her voice firmer now. This isn't about PR, Charles. This is about the reality I've lived in my whole life. I'm not you. I don't have lawyers on speed dial. When someone like me knocks on a rich person's door in the middle of a storm, they don't see desperation, they see danger. He stopped, facing her. I know. No, she snapped. You're starting to, but you still don't. Not fully. He was quiet. Then he asked gently, what do you need from me? I need you to let me speak. Publicly. On my terms. No. Charles blinked. You mean a statement? No, an interview. Or a forum. Something. I need people to hear what really happened. I need to speak for people who don't get second chances. Or first ones. He nodded slowly. I'll make it happen. Thank you. Maya started to leave, but paused. There's something else. Charles waited. If this goes sideways, and this woman pushes it to court, I can't be here. I can't stay in your guest house, protected by your name. It'll look like favoritism, like manipulation. You saved my daughter, and the world is full of people who don't care. Charles stepped forward, his voice low. Maya, if it comes to that, I'll testify. I'll speak publicly. You won't be standing alone. She looked up at him, emotion tightening her throat. People like me, we're used to standing alone. Well, he said quietly, not anymore. That night, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought of Jasmine, of the snowstorm, of the houses that didn't open their doors. But mostly, she thought of Ella, and how close they'd come to losing everything. Tomorrow, she'd call a civil rights attorney. She'd call a friend who used to work in community outreach. Because if this storm hadn't ended with her in a hospital, it might have ended with her in a jail cell. Or worse. She wouldn't stay quiet. Not this time. The room was smaller than Maya, expected maybe 30 folding chairs lined in rows, a modest wooden podium at the front, and a projector quietly humming from a table in the back. The venue was the West End Community Center, nestled between a church thrift store and a Dominican bakery in a South Side neighborhood Maya knew well. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Charles had offered a media stage, press coverage, even national attention. She declined all of it. This needs to be eye to eye, she told him. Not through cameras, through truth. Still, word had spread. When Maya stepped to the front of the room, her palms damp and knees stiff, there were more than 30 people waiting. There were 100. Students. mothers, retirees in ball caps, and veterans' jackets, teachers, nurses, a few reporters from local outlets, standing quietly along the wall, and in the front row Charles, dressed plainly, sitting beside Ella, who clutched her Lego Dr. Braveheart in her hand like a talisman. Maya cleared her throat and adjusted the mic. My name is Maya William. I'm 29 years old. I've been a housekeeper, a waitress, a caregiver, and a hospital cleaner. I've worked 3 jobs to afford 1 room. I've lived through winter with no heat. I've been called a lot of things, some kind, some cruel, but I've never been called what I should have been called the night of January 17th. She paused. A human being. A hush fell over the crowd. I was walking home from a medical appointment. I'd been sick, really sick, but I still took the train. Still walked the final mile. Because if you don't keep moving in this city, the cold finds you. And that night, so did a child. Maya's voice caught for a moment, but she steadied it. She was 5, wearing socks, barely breathing. I recognized her right away, Ella Reynolds, the daughter of a man whose house I cleaned twice a week. I didn't stop to think. I didn't check who was watching. I picked her up and ran. She looked at the crowd. I ran to every door. I screamed for help. I banged with bloody knuckles, and not a single one opened. A murmur spread. One woman called the police, not to help us, but to accuse me of trying to break in. She said I threatened her. I didn't. I begged, and she called that a threat. Maya's hands tightened around the podium edge. Some say what happened was just fear. But when fear sees a white child in danger and still slams the door, that's not just fear. That's blindness. That's bias. That's the poison of assumptions. She let her words settle, and now, weeks later, I'm facing a complaint, possibly a charge, all for saving a child's life. Silence, then a cough, then someone whispered, "Lord have mercy." Zero. I'm not here to ask for pity, Maya continued. I'm here to remind you. People like me live on a knife's edge. We're seen, not known. Feared, not trusted.